I've returned to the design and eliminated any kind of northward projection with it. I've left the 10-foot addition for a moment to design some of the interior space and etc. So what's shown is still the 10-foot projection here, but nothing coming out to the north. Whether these windows exist is something you'll have to determine. This one's a little bit more expensive to put in because they've got to cut that brick to put it in, but this is new construction here. And we got rid of these planting beds here and expanded that patio to about 800 square feet. What you see here is 800 square feet. I'm just going to cover a couple details as briefly as I can, both for you and the contractor. If it's finished like this up here, this finishes pretty much where it's just a step down to the grade without too much alteration of that grade. So what I have done though with these stairs here is step down 7 from the room onto the patio at this point, and the contractor slopes this to where we have 7 even risers of about 7 inches apiece coming up from here. That gives us a slope to these edges, but they will have to, all of these edges, all this concrete will have to finish, or pavers or whatever it is. This wall is set level, of course, the top of that wall is set level, so all at the margins, that is level. So I have it sloping down to here and here, and now I don't know if this is affected by the permit or not, but for this to be code compliant stairwell here, stairway here, and it should be, it'd be ideal if it were, those bottom steps have to come, that bottom step is set too low in the first place and it has to come out. So what I'm showing in this plan here is I use those 4 steps that are removed from that, and they form the margin up here at this east side of the patio. And these are all, 7 even risers coming up here. This is wood steps I'm still showing there, but maybe those are also done in stone, similar to these here, or concrete, or some hardscaping material. These are some railings I'm showing, cable railings. You would have to specify a lot of that. I will send you the catalog. And really those steps, they don't have to, these steps here don't have to come that far south. They can actually be pushed all the way there. And you would still have the opportunity, if you want to put a gate from this thing here over to that brick wall here. Of course you could have a gate there if you want. Here the grade, this is where the grade right around here is where it falls off and goes down to here. So I have that railing extending that far on that corner. And then whether the city enforces it or not, those stairs should have handrails going down. And that was these are really simple. I'm sure there's a variety of arrangements can be made to do this, but that's the way I did it, just to indicate it needed to be done or should be done. And that was the best I could do at the top with that simple design. In terms of this newel post ends here, I'd like it to end a little bit further that way, but then I can't attach this. I could, but they require these railings to be 34 inches from the plane of the stairs, and that is what that one is, and that's the minimum, 34 to 38. And then of course you will need some sort of similar thing, at least on one side of each of those is all that's going to be required. I'm showing it on both because the stairs are wide enough for 2 kids to be traveling in opposite directions, but over here probably should have at least a single handrail. And of course those second floor windows, I haven't done anything up there, but we can presume that if those are kept, a couple of them slide north, and we have some sort of a window in that bathroom as well. So I don't know if that's going to work out with the chorusing on these, whether we're going to be able to add just 12 inches or 18 inches, maybe 24 inches to this wall without having to cut this top course down. And the contractor will have to figure that out. But here we have 7 inches down to here, and then I have a slight slope, an 1/8 inch per foot, to determine where the top of that wall is. And that can be adjusted according to field conditions. But the other thing I did with regard to these stairs, these are the 4 you have here, and that's a 14-inch tread, and that one's set in error. So I have that one brought up where it should be, and then this space from here to here divided into, I don't know how these rocks are sold, whether they're certain rise height, perhaps that's the case and that's why that one was down. Maybe they should be concrete, but in any event, particularly near the swimming pool, and now it's a bigger run, it's 8 risers or 7 risers, those ought to be code compliant. So what I've done is I have made those 7. I think those ones are about 7 1/4 each, based upon how I've done this sloping, and I've shortened their run to 12 inches down from the 14 that was here. Those were 14-inch treads here, so I've shortened that down to where they're 7 1/4 riser and 12-inch tread. And of course that's still going to require the extension of those 2 lengths of wall that enclose that stairwell. Those are going to be extended as well to capture that. Now in this next section we're going to cover quite a few different items. These windows, as I said, neither of those have to be there, but I wanted to have a little bit of dimensionality to that wall, and these can be like this down to the backsplash, which is probably more recommended than what I ended up showing, which was something like this. And then the appliances were arranged like this, and this is when I had 2 of these windows here. I got rid of that full standing freezer and went with these 2 24-inch drawers. Going forward though, I reverted and got rid of those drawers and went back to your freezer. So yes, as you'll see going forward through the design, this one was ultimately eliminated, the one that would have to be cut into the brick. This one was left in place for the moment. It can go though, for that matter, but I was just trying to get a feel for how much space you have along that wall when we go for this 10-foot addition here. This next section is going to largely deal with this beam that's going to be required. And when we go that 10 feet and we put this bearing at the same as the rest of the bearing in the house, we end up with a good, well, it's between 3 and 4/12 pitch here. But with this traditional beam, this is the 3 11-inch LVLs that it's going to take if we have this mid-span support. And those are situated like this, and with that thing over them, this is the beam work here with its crown work and the column here. I have bumped out this upper part so that crown on the side of that column, or the side of that beam cladding, can finish against the ceiling on both sides of it. Now, I suppose that beam and column can be moved to the east some, and where these are cantilevered like this. I don't think that's going to be a problem. That's only 5 inches there, typical brick cantilever. So that could be done there. So there's some fungibility about, 4 or 5 inches worth, about where exactly that beam ends up. This drop beam 3 LVLs ends up. Now I do know you envisioned this addition taking up approximately the footprint of the screen porch, and I just want you to bear with me while I just work with this 10-foot addition for now, and then see where we go from there. It's more than possible to expand that really up to 14 feet or more, I suppose more, if this beam could be increased in size. But for now, I'm going to just talk about this, and this is what I was talking about, how I bumped this wall out here some so that the top, this crown mold, can finish against that. Ignore where this baseboard is on this column. So that's bumped out to capture that crown at the top. And this is if you put 2 of those beams in, 2 of these arrangements here. The second one would just be false, and that adds like that. Then I start putting in the counter space and how that's going to occupy space and interface with these potential columns if you use these 2. But if we have those 2 beams or something like this, and then we assume that the range, hood and all of that is arranged between these. But because that ceiling's so low, this just seems like a lot of, for one thing, it's some expense, but it just seems like a lot of extra stuff that obviously that second one is completely decorative, and I did go through this to look at whether or not we could help the sizing of this if this were an actual beam, so that we wouldn't have to double these joists up here. And the way that works out is it would take 3 14-inch beams, which would bring instead of 311s, and it would bring the bottom of that down really to an unacceptable level for the scale of the that floor height or that ceiling height in that room. So I abandoned that, and that's just a false beam as shown. There's the 14-inch come down too far, and I think it's probably going to be too much of a headache to push those up in here to cut the bottom or cut all these joists and push those up. So I just pretty much, plus you would have the additional expense of these ones where you have to remain, even if you add these 314s mid-span, so that you don't have to replace these or double these joists over them. This one still remains at 311-inch LVLs, and then you got 314s here with all that expense, 30 feet of that. So I didn't really feel there was any kind of advantage there, and so that if it stays, it's a false beam. These joists have to be doubled under that bedroom and bathroom. A second or a third alternative, or fourth, whatever, is you could just use a single beam. You could eliminate all of the columns throughout and use this single 5.5 by 24-inch beam. And hopefully I have the information about what that expense is, how much that is compared to the 3 LVLs. But that could be done, and then that column is eliminated entirely. But that's a little severe, a little labor intensive. So a third alternative, that was the fourth alternative, this flush beam like this. The third alternative is a 5.5 by 12. This could be these can be the 311-inch LVLs or 5.5 by 12 glue lamb pushed up into this ceiling and wall. This wall would need to be cut off and modified, and Carl knows how that's done. And then these joists are suspended from that. These joists still need doubled, but they are then suspended from this beam that's pushed up into the ceiling. This 5.5 by 12 would still require this column mid-span, but now it wouldn't go up to a clunky kind of beam. It would just go straight up to the ceiling. So because I thought that this was one of the better solutions, I designed the kitchen kind of based around this. It would still work the other way around as well, but I just wanted to see how are all these appliances going to interface and how is your counter space going to work. And a lot of this, you guys will have to drive that design work, possibly with your own kitchen designer or whoever's supplying the cabinetries, particularly for some of the detail work. But I started with this just to see how things would work out, okay, and eliminating that east window right away. And this was the go-in. This is a liner here, and then some sort of special hood is supplied for around that. Wooden hood is supplied around that. But this was the first where I was first working with this, and I have shifted it over to the extent possible based on the location of this and how far that has to bump out to accommodate the column capital. So that shifted it this way, and that left this much space up here, and I tightened that up. There's the 30-inch freezer. This is the 36-inch refrigerator with the cooktop and its range hood here. And all of these cabinetries, all these finishes were just put in here to give us a starting point, to give you a feel for the space. So those can all be adjusted, and those are just somewhere to start with. I don't know whether this piece above the refrigerator is pushed up like this higher up in here, or whether it's kept the same as the one above the freezer, which I'm just showing that with a couple of shelves for sculpture or something, because that's only about 9 inches left here. And I also don't know, because your kitchen ceilings are a little lower than some, how your cabinet supplier, how they work in terms of the cabinet height and all that, and that's why it's so critical that they probably end up completing that portion of the design. But I did move that over and picked up 7 inches of space along this countertop here. Then putting the freezer in, and that left about 10 inches or so here, and I thought maybe you would want a little broom closet or pantry closet in that kitchen because the only broom closet's out in the hall, which is close enough, but maybe for a food pantry you would want a food pantry. So what I did is these cabinets flanking the range top are 36 inches wide. The range top manufacturer requires a minimum of 18. So we have a lot of space to work with this as it's shown now. And so the first thing I did is reduce these to 30 inches a piece and create enough space to put a food pantry type cabinet here at this end. And this was how that bank was ending up, from that starting perspective, or that starting point. And then we start putting in some of these appliances and cabinetry and countertops and etc. And that bank is finished out like what I showed in that section. This is with that flush beam with no column at all. But if we have the column, it's here, and this it's going to be finished size of 8 inches. A minimum, because the support has to be 6 inches, and that support will come all the way through there to its little slab down here. But yeah, the flush beam with a support column, which means that's a 5.5 by 12 glue lamb, or those 3 11.25 LVLs with that column. Or without it, it's going to be 5.5 by 24. And this is with the drop beam, the 3 LVLs dropped, and their support column. And I don't know, that's an island over there, and I'm sure that you have plenty to say about this and plenty to figure out about how you want to do that space there. I didn't think a whole big island. I wasn't sure how you would clean off the middle of it. So I've broken it into 2 islands, one more for seating and the other more for work. But you could have just a big table. That's a 5-foot table shown there with 8 seats around it and plenty of clearance with this single beam shown through here. And this is more of a finished kind of photo with that single beam. Now notice that single beam's running into this cabinetry. So if we use either a single beam or 2 of these beams running in here, this obviously gets all redesigned so that those interface with that cabinet work. And so here when it's in this finished photo, I don't know what 2 of them look like. I didn't make a finished photo with 2 of them. But this doesn't seem too bad, really, even with the dropped beam. And there's without the drop beam, and none at all. And then from this side, and then from the south door coming in from the little hallway, the same sort of progression through some of these alterations and variations. And here you see that I did not redesign this to account for either single or double beam coming in. I just wanted to show them for a feel for the thing. I really don't like how these columns, the necessary columns, end up just on one side of these islands. I'm not sure about that. So I thought maybe the single is better, maybe none is the best of all, depending on what that member runs through here. And I am waiting for a cost quote on that. This is just looking out the kitchen window at the sink, 63 inches from the floor. So this is the floor plan as shown now with that 10-foot addition. I do want you to note, and I have this somewhere, these beam sizes here as shown, which are like this, 3 11.25 LVLs or 12-inch by 5 1/8 glue lamb, or for a clear span and no column, the 5.5 by 24 glue lamb. Now what I wanted to mention though is that even if you add another 2 feet or even if you add another 4 feet, the sizing of those remains the same. For whatever reason, that loading does not increase where it requires a change in the size of these beams if you push this out. So that has no effect, and you just have to decide, is there enough space in this kitchen, or do we want even more length going out here and then reducing the hardscape terrace by whatever you add here. The further you go out though, the lower this ceiling, the slope of this ceiling becomes, which you would just have to run ice and water shield on that once it drops below 312, maybe even once it drops below 412. that might require ice and water shield on the whole surface before the shingles are put on. But yes, it's more than possible without increasing the expense of the beams themselves to push this out whatever additional distance you might like. And here is just looking at these floor plans up close. For you to review, these are the clearances. I've put 4 feet between counters everywhere. Sometimes they want more in front of this range top, but we do have kind of an opening path through here. Maybe you want this one big island here. Maybe there's something in the middle breaking that up. Maybe this is curved around like this. There's a whole variety of things that you will have to decide. But this is the arrangement with this existing 10-foot addition. And that's showing that 8-person table in there, but that didn't seem to make sense since you were going to have the dining room right over to the east. So a lot to consider there, and I'm not sure increasing, I don't know if you need more space down here. I'm not sure if adding more length to this kitchen gives you what you want up here. And I'll need you to be the guide on that. In terms of skylights, I would think a group of 3 maybe over these windows, and maybe this is 12-foot door, shown as a 12-foot door, and that's about as wide as we can go with this kitchen layout and what we have with the stairs going down to the patio here. And then another group of skylights over this door, and again, that's something you will decide how much skylights you want in there. And since I did mention skylights, quick review here. With the windows and doors situated like they are, according to this plan, the way it's drawn, that roof framing, if you adjust it so that the openings are centered on this group of windows here, you're not going to have the same thing there. So a person is going to have to add an extra rafter in there and deal with seaming the roof sheeting with this oddball joist in here. But that's the only way to get these openings to bear a relationship to these 2 openings down here. And once you did that way, these 3 were over here, and it worked out that 4 would be best over here. Now you could shift all this roof framing around and put a pair here and 3 there if you wanted less, but you can do whatever you like all the way across here. But the skylight should have some sort of a direct relationship with these big openings down here. So that's how they are there. But I just wanted to mention that, and because we'll probably show them in the next review. Finally, in case it might help, is a walkthrough. And this walkthrough does not show any column. It shows it's a walkthrough with this plan here. And then following that will be a second walkthrough with at least this single column here, in case the cost of that beam is just too pricey to consider. Or if you want both of these, that's a whole different thing, both of these beams.